Hello everyone, today is a very special day because just yesterday Red Bull launched the first cars of 2026, or at least deliveries. And let me tell you, by the way, the Red Bull car is looking amazingly beautiful. But this is not what this video is about. I want to get recorded my boldest or unpredictable opinions of 2026 before any more damning evidence comes out in the Barcelona test that is going to take place in just under 2 weeks from now. And of course, feel free to share your own bold predictions with me down below, and let's see how bold we are for this season when everything can change. But without further ado, let's get into predicting. Prediction number 1. Ferrari will finish P5 or lower in the constructors. Hold on, Tifosi, don't grab your torches and forks just yet. Please hear me out before you come to unalive me. So, why do I think that this is going to happen? First of all, I believe that everybody by now has heard that Ferrari are having trouble with the 2026 car. And it's not only the engine, but the problem is that they might not even get the 2026 car ready in time for the preseason testing in Barcelona, the first shut-off test in just under 2 weeks. And that's a very worrying sign for them. Plus, we have the Lewis Hamilton problem, which it's almost unbelievable to say, but yeah, that's where 2026 got us. After 2025 season that was really bad, where he was exiting out in Q1 week in, week out by the end of the season, he was very pessimistic about his whole 2025 season, very pessimistic about the year to come, and I'm really worried that if Hamilton doesn't pick himself up with a less than optimal car, less than optimal engine, Leclerc alone can't do the job. So yeah, I think Ferrari are in a very tight spot for 2026, or at least they are very likely to be in a very tight spot, and Lewis has to pick himself up. Otherwise, Ferrari is just setting up for a really big disaster. I'm sorry, Tifosi, I didn't want it to be this way, but your team leaves me no choice but to do this. Number 2, Alonso will finish top 5 in the Drivers' Championship. Alright, bear with me on this one because I promise you that this will make sense, and I can almost hear you calling me the Lulu on the other side of the screen, but the only reason I'm not predicting Alonso to win the whole thing is because Aston Martin doesn't have a Mercedes engine. They had one last year but decided to change, and yeah, that might have hurt him a little bit. Regardless of the engine, I want to believe that Newey is cooking up something real good inside the Aston Martin headquarters, because they have a top-notch factory, top-notch facilities. Nobody can has better than that. It's literally impossible. The Daddy Stroll has injected so much money into the Aston Martin project that they basically have all the tools to give Adrian Newey a shot to produce a monster of a car. But there are of course two problems, and the first one I already mentioned, it's the engine. It's not optimal. Honda sold basically everything last year when they decided to depart from Formula 1, and now that they've come back, they've started almost from scratch, and we all know the kind of luck that Alonso gets with Honda and the GP2 engines. And the other problem, I don't believe I have to say much, because it sits in the other side of the garage, and his name is Lance Stroll. But it's more of a problem for the team, not for Alonso, because as long as Aston Martin has Alonso, as long as Newey cooks up a really good car, if Honda makes an engine decent enough to compete with the Ferraris, maybe, just maybe, Alonso can be fighting with the top teams. Because we all know Fernando, if he has a car that is capable of something, he will extract 110%. I would even go as far as to say that he's kind of like Verstappen, but I'd be lying, because Verstappen is kind of like Fernando. He was the OG in terms of extracting everything out of the car. Just look at 2010, look at 2012. So why do I think he's going to finish in the top 5 when there's so much competition with the Aston Martin? Well, first of all, Fernando Alonso for me is the second best driver of the grid. I don't care what you're gonna say, for me he is the second best driver on the grid still. And that's about it. And the next reason I'm going to give is, let's see who Aston Martin is up against in this fight in the top teams. We have Mercedes and McLaren, which I think will be two staples inside the top 5 teams. Then we have Red Bull, that I believe will also be up there, and perhaps we might have a Williams closer to them. I don't know how much closer it will be, but I think they might be there. But let's consider a scenario where only the former 3 are in the fight. Ferrari will not be better than Aston Martin if Adrian Newey gets a good car, and probably Alonso will be in front of Leclerc and Hamilton quite easily. So that leaves us with 6 drivers, the 2 Mercedes, 2 McLarens and 2 Red Bulls. The second Red Bull driver has a 90% chance of being as useful as wet tires in Bahrain. And then we have the second driver in the Mercedes team, which is Kimi Antonelli. And don't get me wrong, I like Kimi a lot, I think he has a lot of potential, but his 2025 season didn't convince me, and I don't know what to expect from him in 2026, but if I had to put a bet on it, I would say that he's not going to be that good. He's not going to be on par with the top drivers at least. So I think that if Alonso has a car that can fight with him, he will probably finish in front of Kimi more often than not, and this is the most important part for me, will be more consistent than him. So that leaves basically Piastri, Lando, Max Verstappen and George Russell, 4 drivers. If there is a 5th slot, I think Alonso will be there. Prediction number 3. Mercedes will not dominate. People have been increasingly talking about George Russell as a potential favorite to win the next year's championship. And that's partly because he himself just at the end of last year started to make quite a lot of noise around what Mercedes was preparing for next year, already hinting at the engine and so on that Mercedes are developing for next year, and they seem to be really confident in what they're developing. But I don't think this will be a repeat of 2014, because back in 2014, they were also the engine suppliers for McLaren before that whole GP2 disaster with Honda, and they were also the suppliers for Williams. They beat both of them very easily back then, but I think the circumstances this year are quite different from what they were back then, because back in 2014, McLaren was already on a decline, and basically were not the 2-time champion of the Constructors' Championship and didn't have a reigning world champion in Lando Norris. And also for Williams, although 2014 was still a very, very good year for Williams, they are now in a kind of different position where they are not trying to maintain their status, they are building themselves back up, and that also might be playing a role here in some way or another. But there are also problems outside the Mercedes bubble, because if we step out, we can see some good candidates. I've talked about Aston Martin here, and don't forget that engine upgrades will be allowed if the engine is in deficit towards some other engine on the grid. So if the Mercedes is very ahead in the beginning, as early as round 6, teams can start to bring upgrades to close up their deficit. Red Bull have caught on to the same loophole as the Mercedes did, and they also might be the second best engine, so if Max has a good car, perhaps he can fight with them. It will not be easy for Mercedes to dominate. I think it will be very close between them and McLaren, and perhaps there are some other players around it, like the Red Bulls, and perhaps like Williams or even Aston Martin. I don't know, probably one of those. And of course, one of the biggest factors in Mercedes not dominating, I think, has to do with their second driver. As I said before, I won't dwell on it too much. I don't believe Kimi is ready just yet to be at the top level, but I also accept that I might be completely wrong here. Let's see how 2026 plays out for him. And of course, we spoke of Verstappen, and I couldn't leave him out of these predictions, because after what he did in 2025, I can't predict anything but that he's going to be fighting for the championship. And this is a bold prediction that I don't think is going to be that bold or unpopular. Although, to be fair, I don't think many of the opinions that I gave here today are going to be that unpopular. This one certainly won't, because by now everybody knows what Verstappen is capable of. He's a complete GOAT, man, the best driver on the grid by far at the time. If there are still any non-believers watching this, this is the part where I try to convince you otherwise. And I'll start by the engine, because I think that they were the only ones that caught on to what Mercedes was doing and probably are going to have the second best engine on the grid, despite not having the same experience as the other manufacturers. The second part to this is that in 2025 they have proved that they can make progress with their car even without Adrian Newey. And remember, Adrian Newey has been in Red Bull for decades, and without them, they still managed to bring a lot of upgrades to the car and made it a championship-worthy car by the end of 2025. And so I believe that is going to at least have a very decent car, because Adrian Newey is one guy, a very important one at that, yes, but they have a whole team that is very competent. And they also have the driver to make the difference. If they give him a car that can only have a sniff at the win, he will explore every boundary that he can to extract the most out of the car and take the best result possible in a given weekend. The best way to sum it all up is Max doesn't need the best car to win the championship, he does only need one that can fight for it. I don't make the rules, man, the guy is becoming goated and goated every year that passes, and I can only watch. So I believe we'll have a four-way fight for the championship between Russell, Piastri, Norris and Verstappen, and I'm all for it, and I really hope I'm right on this one, because that would be amazing. I feel rather confident that I'm going to get some of these right. If you have any more bold predictions, if you have thoughts that you want to share about my predictions, leave them down below in the comment section, and don't forget to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, that would support me and I would really love to have you in our community, and I'll see you on the next week for the next video.